Chapter 3, Section 4, Primary Data Collection, Part 2, Experiment. In this section, you will learn experiment as a method to collect primary data, and what types of experiments there are, how to design effective experiment, and advantages of experiment in machine learning. An experiment is a systematic and controlled procedure conducted to investigate a hypothesis or examine a variable's effect on an outcome. In an experiment, researchers manipulate one or more independent variables to measure their effects on a dependent variable. An experiment aims to establish causality by controlling for external factors and observing the direct effects of changes in the independent variables. Experiments allow for accurate data collection under controlled conditions. Therefore, experiment is useful when we need to collect data while blocking out external influences. We can conduct experiments in the laboratory, field, or online. Laboratory experiments are conducted in a controlled environment, such as a laboratory or a dedicated research facility. In laboratory experiments, we can control variables to a high degree, and the researchers can manipulate and measure variables accurately. For example, a researcher might conduct a laboratory experiment to determine the effect of different lighting conditions on the ability of a computer vision model to detect an object. Field experiments are conducted in a natural or real-world setting rather than in a controlled laboratory. Field experiments enable researchers to study phenomena in a more natural setting, manipulating one or more independent variables. For example, a company may conduct a field experiment to test the effectiveness of a new marketing campaign by randomly assigning different advertisements to different geographic areas and measuring sales results. An online experiment is an experiment conducted over the internet. Online experiments are becoming increasingly popular due to their scalability and ability to reach large and diverse audiences. A typical example of an online experiment is A/B testing, where various versions of a web page or app feature are shown to multiple users to evaluate which version performs better regarding user engagement and conversion rates. Whether we can collect high-quality data depends on the experiment design. There are several points to consider for effective experiment design. The first is to formulate a clear hypothesis or research question. This will help determine variables to manipulate and measure. The second is control and randomization. To ensure the experiment's validity, we must control confounding variables that could affect the results. This often involves randomization to minimize bias. It is also necessary to ensure that results differences are attributable to the manipulation of the independent variable. The third is reproducibility. We should implement experiments with sample sizes sufficient to validate the reliability of the findings. That is, ensure that the findings are not a result of random chance. The fourth is ethical considerations. Ethical considerations are important, especially in experiments involving human subjects. Researchers must obtain informed consent and ensure the confidentiality and privacy of participants so that we can minimize the potential risks and harms associated with participation in the experiment. In primary data collection in machine learning, experiment has several advantages. The first is its usefulness for causal inference. Experiment is one of the few methods that can demonstrate causal relationships between variables. We can do it by manipulating independent variables and controlling for external factors. Second, in experiments, we can control conditions. Experiments can create a controlled environment for data collection. This reduces the influence of confounding variables and allows for more accurate measurement of effects. The third is reproducibility. Others can repeat the same experiment because the experiment is conducted under predetermined conditions and procedures. This helps to verify the reproducibility of the results. Despite its advantages, the experiment has several challenges. First, they are resource-intensive. Implementing experiments often require significant time, money, and effort. This is especially true for laboratory experiments that uses specialized equipment and facilities. The second is ethical considerations. Experiments involving human subjects must adhere to strict ethical guidelines to protect the participants' rights and welfare. These ethical considerations may constrain what we can do in the experiment. Third is the limitation in generalizability. Because experiments are conducted under controlled conditions, the findings from experiments are not necessarily generalizable to real-world situations. Thank you for watching. Please thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.